Hi, I'm Mrs. Gill and I'm your math teacher for this grade 9 math course. So we're going to start with some review from what you learned in grade 7 and grade 8. Most of what we're doing right now is grade 7 was when you learned it, but you still used it in grade 8 math. First of all, exponents. Now before I start, no calculators will be allowed. We'll be having an evaluation or an assessment in a few days. I'll give you details on that personally later. But you cannot use a calculator. I need to know what you can do without a calculator. So as you're watching this video on your own, if you have your calculator out and you're solving all the questions on the calculator, you're not going to be prepared for the evaluation we're going to have. So you need to be practicing these skills without a calculator. So for exponents, the key rule when you're working with exponents is to ask yourself each time, what is the exponent touching? That way you'll always know what gets written out twice if the exponent were a 2, or 3 times or 4 times if the exponent were a 4. So example 1, solve each of the following showing your simplification line first. I'll explain that. If you look at these questions, they're all different. They're all slightly different from each other. They all have a base of 7, and most of them have a power of 2, but the last one here has a power of 3. So simplification line first. Okay. First thing we have to look at is what is the exponent touching? So that exponent is a 2, and that 2 is literally touching a bracket right here. That's what it's touching, is a bracket. It's not touching the 7, it's touching the bracket. Brackets always come in pairs, so that means the bracket set must be written out twice and whatever is inside it. So your first line has to look like this. It has to have the brackets there, and everything that's inside the brackets is included, has to be written out twice. Notice every line has to begin with an equal sign. This is telling me this is proper form. This saying this line is equal to the line above it, and it has to be there, and you do lose form marks, which are communication marks, for not communicating your math correctly. So if you're not in the habit of writing your answers one below each line below, if you've been writing beside all the time, you need to break that habit, and at 1 equal sign per line. So 7 times 7, of course, is 49. Let's look at the next one there. How is this one different from this one? What is the exponent touching? In this case, the exponent 2 is touching a 7. That means a 7 is going to be written out. That's what this is saying up here. That way you'll always know it gets written out twice. So the 7 gets written out twice. Now we don't write 77, we write 7 times 7. For some of you, this dot might be new. That is a multiplication operation symbol. It's a little tidier than an X because we need X's in a lot of other places when we're doing algebra. X is an unknown, so I try not to use X's too much. You might see it a bit here in review, but I need you to get used to seeing a dot for multiplication. So again, we have the same answer that we did before, 49. Although the questions looked a bit different, they ended up the same. Now what about number 3 here? What's the exponent touching? It's touching a bracket. So that whole bracket set has to get written out 2 times, including the negative because it was inside the bracket set. So what's negative 7 times negative 7? We get 49 again. Fourth one, negative 7 to the power of 2. This is the one where students, even in grade 12, students mess this up. What is the exponent touching? It's touching the 7. It's not touching the negative like over here. This included the negative. We had to write the negative out twice here. But this exponent, this is saying negative 7 squared. So what I really need to write is negative 7 times 7. Only the 7 gets squared because the 2 is just touching the 7. If the negative was meant to be included, it would look like this. So what's negative 7 times positive 7? This one's negative 49. Last one, we're going to a power of 3. What is the exponent touching? It's touching a bracket. So the whole bracket set, everything inside gets written out 3 times. Like that. Now, there's no calculators allowed, so you're going to have to figure out what is negative 7 times negative 7 times negative 7. So let's just do the first 2 together here. Negative 7 times negative 7, we already know that is 49. Let me just put it up here. That's a 49. Then we need to multiply that by another -7. I'm just going to multiply it by 7. I'm going to put my negative down here when I'm done. So when we do this multiplication, this has got to be your old way. Some of you have multiplication, longhand multiplication set up differently depending on how you learned it. But for me, I'm just going to review it this way. If you don't know how to do long multiplication this way, then you do it the way you learned how to do it, but it is not with a calculator. So the first thing I'm going to do is 7 times 9, and that's 63. So the 3 goes down below the line here, and then the 6 comes up. Now I multiply 7 times 4. 7 times 4 is 28. I've got to add on this 6, 28 and 6. We're going to add those together and we get, whoops, 28 and 6 gives us 34. Negative 343. So our answer is negative 343. So remember, no calculator. So if you have something that's a little hard for you to do in your head, you just work it out. Example 2, substitute where x is -1, b is 5, and c is -2. So one of the rules with math, just like up here we have these rules about writing our lines below all the time, always writing down and having equal signs on every line. Another rule is we always substitute using brackets. So when I start off with a question like this, and I have to substitute for x, b, c, all this stuff, I'm going to sub these numbers in with brackets because right here, for example, my x is supposed to be -1. There is a difference between using a bracket with my negative and not using a bracket. We got two different answers here. So if I always substitute using brackets, I will get the right answer. So my next line has my -1 in a bracket squared, and then everything else is just substituted with brackets. That helps us keep it straight. So what do we do next? Now we have to remember BEDMAS, the order of operations. Brackets, exponents. So the B for BEDMAS means to work inside the bracket. There's nothing inside the brackets to do here. So we go to the exponents. This exponent is the only one we have. So I'm going to write that out twice. So I put it in a different color. This is the only new step is in red. Everything else stayed the same. It's all in black. So this was the E for exponents. Now my next is division, multiplication in the order they appear. So I have multiplication here. I also have multiplication here, but I'm just going to put it all together. -1 times -1 is +1. I dropped the bracket off here. This was a negative or a subtraction or a minus, and this is a +5 or a +5 or add 5. So when I put both of these together, subtraction with a positive or a negative with a positive, I get a -5, and then -2 times -1 is +2, and there's a positive there anyway. So that's where we get those terms from, and all together we get a -2 for our answer. Let's look at the next one over here. So before I continue, pause anytime. You have a handout to match this work. So you should be filling in the handout as we go along. If you haven't been filling it in, just press pause now and just catch up, right? It won't take you long. We haven't done too much yet. We have more to go. So get caught up on the handout, get it all filled in. And any time like now is a good time to actually press pause and try to do this one yourself. And then when you press play again, you're going to watch me completing the question here with you so you can see if you got it right and see if you have the hang of it. So if you want to press pause here, try this question yourself on your handout and then come back and see if you got it right. So here we go. We're substituting with our brackets. Hopefully you remember to put brackets around everything there. Now, what do we do first? Order of operations. We've got to do the exponents first. So I'm going to write the 5 out twice. Now, some of you hopefully are going to get to a point where you can just go ahead and put a 25 there. That's fine. But for now, for most of us, I want to see work shown. I want you to show your work. That's what it means, showing your simplification line first. So I want to see work shown for these questions. We're just starting the course, and I need to know that you're not just putting it all in your calculator. So if students only give me the answers on their homework, that could mean two things. It could mean you just looked up the answers, which I will usually provide you the answers, and you wrote them down, so you didn't do any work. It could also mean you did it all on your calculator. So if you don't show me any work, I worry that that's one of the two things that has happened, that you actually don't know how to do it, so you're just writing down the answers, you're copying the answers, or you are using your calculator. So you have to show me the steps. For sure, later on, we'll get to a point where you don't need to show all your steps anymore. But until I know what level everybody's at, you have to show me your work. Okay, what are we going to do next here? We've got rid of the exponents. Now we're on multiplication. There's lots of multiplication to do here. I did the 5 times 5 first, but you could have done the 2 times 5 first as well. You'll get the same answer no matter which way you do it. Negative 2 times negative 2 is a positive 4. This black negative sign is this black negative sign. You can think of it as a negative or subtract or take away. It doesn't matter, but there's only one of them, and this is a positive. So 2 times 25 gives us 50 minus 4 once I drop off those brackets, and the answer for that is 46. So if you tried that on your own, I hope you got 46. If you didn't get 46, I hope you found your mistake. And if you didn't find your mistake, you still don't know where you went wrong, then let me know and I will help you with that. Next, we're going to talk about the order of operations in depth a little more, what they are. You did learn them all in elementary school, so this is all review for you. The big one I want to talk about is brackets. It means we want to clean up what's inside the brackets. If I just have like a bracket with a 5 inside, there's nothing I can do with that. That's just a 5. But it's when you have a 5 plus 2 inside the brackets, that's what gets done first. So example 3, evaluate. Evaluate means find the final answer. And you want to show all steps below the question. That's proper form. So here's your question. When you're doing your homework, you're going to start by writing out this mathematical part. You would write, if this were number 3, you'd write 3a, you'd write this out. You don't need to write the instructions, but you need to write this out. This must be your first line. And then underneath, you're going to put an equal sign, and you're going to do one step at a time. So our next step for this one is what's inside the brackets. 5 minus 8. There's the B in BEDMAS. What's inside the brackets? 5 minus 8 has to go first. That becomes a negative 3. All right, what's next in the order of operations? Exponents. Do we have any exponents in this question? No, so we're done with that. Next are these two, division or multiplication in the order they appear, meaning from left to right. So the same way we read from left to right. That's the way we read math. So I'm going to start here on the left. Negative 2 times negative 3, that's multiplication. Negative 3 divided by 2, that's division. But according to the rules of BEDMAS, I have to start here. So I have to do these two first. They give me a positive 6, and now I can divide by 2 and get 3. Part B. Okay, order of operations. B for brackets. There's nothing to do inside this bracket. It's just a negative 3. There's nothing I can do with it, so I'm going to leave it alone. I'm now going to go on to exponents. The power is a 2. Remember what we did before. What is the exponent touching? It's touching a bracket. This whole negative 3 bracket set gets written out twice. That's really important, or you'll mess up the signs if you don't do that. So now we've cleaned up the exponents. Now we're on division, multiplication in the order they appear. So reading from left to right, the first thing I see is addition. Okay, we can't do that yet. And then I see multiplication. So I can either do 2 times negative 3 first, or negative 3 times negative. Since I have 3 things right beside each other to multiply, I can do them all at once, or I can do them in pieces. Students, I find, tend to like to do the doubles first. So you would put a 9 there, but you could also have made that a negative 6, and then times negative 3, you're going to get the same answer. We're still on division, multiplication. So that's these two right here. That gives us an 18. Negative 10 plus 18 is 8. Now again, remember, you should not be using your calculator anywhere here. All of this is content that, according to the Ministry of Education, you must be able to do without a calculator. So that's what we'll be testing later to make sure that you can. Order of operations. You're always working down through this BEDMAS word, right? You're starting at the top and working your way down. If you'd like to press pause, try it yourself. You could do that and then come back and see if you get the right answer. So let's get started. What's first? Hopefully everybody knows the answer to this. We have the brackets. There's nothing to do in there. The exponents, we don't have one, so we're on divide and multiply. And there's only division, so I do the division first. I'm going to show you both ways. what I'm doing here is 11 minus, and then I left this black negative sign right here. This subtraction sign is here. And I did 9 divided by negative 3. 9 divided by negative 3 is negative 3. Or I could have done negative 9 or subtract 9 or minus 9 divided by negative 3. That would have given me a positive 3 if I did it that way. As you can see, I'm going to get the same answer because these two negative signs right here are going to give me a positive. It doesn't matter which way I do it, I'm going to get 14. Last one on this slide. So this one's a little more tricky than any that we've done. And one thing I want to point out is that line along the bottom, that operation, think of that fraction or division symbol, that line, as a bracket also, because it separates the numerator from the denominator. I have to do the numerator is one big piece and the denominator is one big piece. So let me work this one out here below. So first I start with my equal sign. Now I'm going to put this operation symbol here for division first, and I'm just going to look at the numerator. What should I do first in the numerator? The brackets, 8 minus 11. So I'm going to do that first. 5 minus 3, not touching that yet. But 8 minus 11, that's going to go in the brackets. Negative 3. This is a subtraction here. So that's the first thing I did on the numerator. Now look at the denominator as separate from the numerator. There's not much to do with the denominator, except put these two together here. The positive and the negative can be put together. These two symbols, a positive and a negative, when they're side by side like that with just a bracket in between, that's the same as 4 minus 11. So back here, remember this big line, that's like a bracket, so I'm going to look at the numerator and denominator separately. What I'm trying to say is right now I would never think of doing 5 divided by 4, right? These two. I can't do that yet. Or 3 divided by 11. Or these two negatives make a positive. I can't cross this line yet, not until I simplify completely the numerator and simplify completely the denominator. So back to my numerator, I have to do the multiplication first. So that's 5. And I'm going to put this minus sign down here. 3 times negative 3, I'm just going to put that in a bracket. You don't need to, but because we have two signs, we're going to. 3 times negative 3 is negative 9. Now we're not supposed to have signs like that, so I'm just going to put a bracket there. My denominator, 4 minus 11, that's a negative 7 on the denominator. I'm still working on the numerator. That's these two make a positive, so that's 5 plus 9 over negative 7. And I'm trying to write below, but I'm going to run out of room here. So I'm going to have 14 over negative 7. So when this happens and you run out of room, you can just put an arrow up. You don't start writing beside. I don't start putting answers here and then another answer here and then another answer here. That's the wrong way to do it because we will be doing equations later and that's going to really confuse things. So I'm just going to erase all this down here. So I'm going to start a new line with an equal sign, and 14 over negative 7, that reduces to a negative 2. Okay, so if you tried that one on your own, that was kind of a tricky one, but if you did and you didn't get a negative 2, just back it up and watch this part of the video again and try to see where you went wrong. So remember, we haven't seen anything new yet. This is all grade 7 and 8 material. The order of operations isn't new. I know that you might have forgotten it because maybe you haven't done math for a while and you've kind of forgotten it, but it really should be coming back to you. You shouldn't be thinking right now, I've never seen this before, I'm learning it for the first time. So we're just reviewing now. If you want further in-depth practice, you can let me know and I can give you extra practice. Next slide, there's your order of operations again. And I just put this up again to remind you, you can't use a calculator. So I'm going to show you how to use a number line to do questions like this. If I had put up here, let's say I had negative 4 plus 6. What I would do with the number line is I would start So I'm going to look at this down here. Put your pencil down on the first number showing in the question, so -4. So I'm going to put my pencil right here on the -4. Then move to the right if you're adding, to the left if you're subtracting, and it's right here. Move to the right or to the left. Since I am adding, I'm going to move to the right, and I'll land at my answer. So I'm going to move 6 spots. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's my answer. The answer is 2. So that's how we use the number lines, and it is fine to use a number line. You're not allowed to use a calculator. Very common for the first few units in grade 9. I give students number lines, or I tell them to write them on the top of their tests, and they're using them all over the place because it's not worth it to make a little mistake with adding or subtracting when you can just use a number line to figure it out. And the more we get into math, the less you'll need one. But it's very common right now for students to be using a number line as we get back into math, maybe after not doing math for a while. So sometimes we see square brackets. Let's evaluate, that means answer this question here. Okay, square brackets. So square brackets, the rule for that is still following the order of operations. I'm at the top of the order of operations, B, brackets. Now I have to clean up what's inside the brackets, but I have to start with the order of operations within the brackets. So when I look at this first piece here, it's got its own little order of operations. So I've got my square bracket, but what am I going to do first in the square bracket? 8 minus 2, or 2 times 3? Hopefully you all said 2 times 3. So I have 8 minus 6. That's the first thing. The plus sign. Now here's another bracket. 3 minus 7 is -4. So the square brackets are also sometimes called nesting brackets when you have multiple brackets inside and out, but you always work with go with the inside out first. So we've got this simplified down into just 2 simple numbers here, 8 minus 6. We're still on B because I haven't finished cleaning up this bracket yet. Then after that I'll get to this exponent. So I'm going to go back down to 8 minus 6. 8 minus 6, and if you can't do that without a calculator, you look down to the number line here in the bottom right corner. I'm going to start at 8. So 8 minus 6, I start at 8 and I subtract. I'm going to the left this time, going to the left 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, I end up at 2 again. So that's a 2 plus -4 squared. I'm going to just do that right now. I'm at the exponents part now. That's -4 times -4. Remember, the whole bracket set gets written out twice. So then I'm on multiplication and division. That's these two right here. -4 times -4 is +16. And lastly, addition, subtraction. 2 and 16 is 18. So there's a question that shows you with the extra set of brackets and a little review of how to use the number line. Now we're on to our last slide. Does it matter which operation we do first in this question? What do you think? Well, let's perform a little experiment here. Let's try division first. Trying division first means what you see in red. I'm going to do that first. That's the 80 divided by 2. I'm going to do that part first. 80 divided by 2 is equal to 40 times 4 is 160. Okay, what if I tried multiplication first? Because the question is saying, does it matter which one we do first? Well, let's see if it matters. I'm going to try 2 times 4 first. So what I put in red, that's what I'm going to do first. 2 times 4 is 8. So I have 80 divided by 8, and that's 10. Which one is right? Which one do you think is right? So if you're in class right now, I would take a vote. You raise your hand. Do you think division is right? Raise your hand. Do you think the multiplication is right? Raise your hand. So which one do you think it is? Hopefully you said this one, because we do it in the order they appear, and division appears before multiplication. So a lot of students want to do multiplication first because, I don't know if it's because it's the easier one or the one you're learning first in elementary school when you're learning to multiply and divide. You just want to do it first. I know 2 times 4, I'm going to do that first. So they do it this way, but this would be the wrong answer. You have to do it from left to right. You have to do it the same way we read a question. You don't start by reading the word first and then jumping over to the word does, right? You have to follow multiplication and division in the order they appear. So I'm just going to go over some important words that will come up in your homework. The first one's sum. If the question asks you for the sum of two numbers, you're adding them. The product of two numbers, you can use the X, or now hopefully you can use the dot now for multiply if you're ready to do that. Brackets also are just like this one right here. That's product, right? When we're multiplying. Increased by. If I had my age increased by 10, I would be adding. Difference. What's the difference between my age and your age? We would be subtracting. And if something is squared, it means you're going to put a power of 2 or an exponent of 2 on it. So that's a quick review of exponents in the order of operations from grade 7 and grade 8. And I have some important things for you to remember. You have some handouts to work on. So remember, I want you to start with a new piece of paper. You're going to write out the title and today's date. So let's say this is your piece of paper here, right? A 3-hole. Today's title, you can see on the front slide here, was called integers. I'm not going to write it all out here. Integers, and I think it says exponents, order of operations, something like that. So you put the title on, and you would put today's date on, like this. You would start with that. Then the first thing you're going to do is rewrite the mathematical question. So if this was our question up here, and let's say this is 1a, the first thing I'm going to do on my sheet is write out 80 divided by 2 times 4. That's the first thing you should do, is write out the question. Next, show your work directly below the line above it, and this is what you've seen. This is the only way you've seen it in today's lesson. Everything has been below, and when you can't fit below, you've seen an arrow to bring you back up again. You do not do your work beside ever again. If that's what you're in the habit of doing, you need to stop today. Another important point is each line should have an equal sign, as you see here. The original question does not, because it's your starting line, right? Then you're saying that this next line is equal to the one above it, and 10 is equal to this, which is equal to this. Do not use a calculator. I know when you're doing your homework, if you're at home right now, I can't see you doing your homework, and you could be using your calculator for the whole thing, but then you are not going to be able to do the evaluation if you can't do this work without a calculator. So just don't get in the habit of using a calculator. We have several units in this course, and all the way, I teach grade 12 university, there's a full unit and at least maybe 2 units where you're not allowed to use a calculator. And we're doing some pretty tough math at that time, so please don't depend on your calculator. The answers are provided, so check your work. That's what they're for. It's to find out if you had this question and you wrote down 10, you look at the answer and you see it's 160, you know you made a mistake. Please check your work. Don't assume you're right. You may have forgotten how to do some math, so please check your work. And don't just write out the answers for every question without showing work. You need to show me work. I know a lot of you can probably skip steps right now, but you're going to humor me for a little while here and show me your work so that I can make sure you're starting off on the right foot. So do lots of practice. Get back into the swing of math. Ask me questions if you're stuck. Remember that this is all review. I'm not teaching this anymore. Once we move on in math, I assume you know how to do all of this, right? So you got to work on it now, catch your mistakes, find any errors or misconceptions that you had, and practice, 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 because that's the best way to make sure you're doing it right. Let me know if you have trouble. Good luck.